Thank you so much for joining us. As you just heard, Gretchen has started our Zoom recording for the folks on Zoom. So welcome to this public safety forum that is sponsored by the Richmond Racial Equity Group. Thank you so much for all the folks who are in the room with us tonight, and welcome to the folks who are joining us online. So just a few quick reminders. If folks who are in the room can remember to silence their cell phones, that would be great. And the folks on Zoom, if you could just be sure to mute yourself to eliminate any background noise when you're not speaking, that would just help our sound recording folks to make sure we get a crisp recording. So many thanks also to the members of the Richmond Congregational Church for graciously sharing their space with us tonight. We really appreciate that. To introduce myself really quickly, I'm Representative Jana Brown. I represent Richmond in the House, and I'm also a member of the Richmond Racial Equity Group. I'm joined by Gretchen Paulson, who is our tech guru for the night, who will be managing our Zoom recording and also helping us facilitate the questions that are going to come in via Zoom. So thank you to Gretchen for that. Just to say a little bit about the Richmond Racial Equity Group, we are a group of Richmond residents that gathered after the murder of George Floyd in May of 2020. So we've met regularly and taken on various projects since then. Our group was formed initially to learn about and discuss racism here in Vermont and to see what we could do as a community to affect positive change, and also to educate our fellow community members about the issues that exist, here in Vermont and in the world. So we're continuing to move that work forward. Obviously, that's not the kind of work that has any kind of endpoint, so there's still a lot of work left ahead of us. So if you're interested in joining us, please check out our website, reach out to us. We have an email list to advise people of upcoming meetings and events. So we welcome all voices, and we'd be really excited to have some new folks join us at our meetings. So please consider that. So just to say a few words about our format for the evening. So we have 3 guests joining us tonight. I'm going to give them a chance to introduce themselves and describe their work. What we're going to do is we're going to hear from each of them for about 5 minutes, and then we are going to take questions from the audience, and also we'll take some questions from folks who are joining on Zoom. You will all have seen on the table when you came in, we have some paper and pencils, so if questions or thoughts occur to you during the presentation, feel free to jot those down so you don't forget them by the time we get to the question and answer session. And that paper also contains a survey about the evening, so we'd love to get some feedback on that as well. So we're going to end our formal discussion at 8. We invite you to stay and chat more with folks, have some refreshments. We don't want to take any food home, so please stick around if you want to chat with folks offline after this as well. So question format is going to be really straightforward. Just raise your hand, I'll call on you. We have this microphone that we're going to be passing around just to get a clear audio. So please just say your name and then ask your question. And Gretchen's going to help us manage questions from the chat. So I think that's all our preliminary logistics, and we are going to start with a land acknowledgement from Scott. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Jana. Some of us have a seasonal cabin that we go to, or your grandfather has a fishing camp and you would spend summers there. For those with those experiences, it's easy to imagine what this place looked like before Richmond was Richmond. The Western Abenaki did not live here full-time. What they did was they came here right around this time of year and had their seasonal camps where they spent 3 or 4 months hunting, fishing, trapping, and processing food. And it must have been exciting, packing up your baskets, piling into the family canoe, heading up the Winooski, Sibo, the Onion River, to your vacation home in the sticks, and probably look forward to it every year. It would be a working vacation for the adults, of course, and the older kids, collecting and hunting and trapping and extracting that food and then smoking, drying, preserving it so that you'd have plenty to eat over the winter. And what made it what I wanted to note was that the resources, they were plentiful. It's still are, and you would never take more than you needed. You would be deliberate about how much you took so that it would be the same when you came back next year and the same for your grandchildren. So with that in mind, I think we can all acknowledge the people who came before us and have gratitude for the resources that we have here tonight in Chief Cambridge and Ms. McSweeney and Ms. Toof. So let's appreciate that and not let them go to waste. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks. All right, so I think we are ready to get started with the main portion of our evening. So I'm just going to briefly introduce our guests tonight, and I'm going to let them tell you about their background and the work that we're doing. So our guests tonight are Cristalee McSweeney, who is the Executive Director of the Williston Community Justice Center. Welcome, Cristalee. Thank you for being here. Hannah Toof, who is the Program Coordinator with the Howard Community Outreach Program, and Chief Cambridge. So I'm going to let them say a little bit more about themselves. They're going to describe their work for about 5 minutes each, and then we will move on to the question and answer portion of the evening. And I also want to make sure to mention that we have some other folks joining us tonight. Want to recognize and appreciate that they're here as well. Officer Matt Cohen, who is the newest Richmond Police Department officer, and Duke, who's also with him here tonight. Thank you so much for coming. And Hinesburg officers Andrew and Frank. Sorry I don't have your last names, but thank you very much for being here. We appreciate that. So, Cristalee, if you want to go first, I'll pass it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Cristalee McSweeney, and I'm the Executive Director of the Williston Community Justice Center. I have worked in the field of restorative justice for about 17 years now. And I live in Williston and have been in Vermont my entire life, and really just in Chittenden County, so I feel really connected to all of the areas that our CJC serves. And my role in the community is to work with people who have committed crimes, infraction, or harm, and to work through a process around accountability and responsibility that is not rooted in blame or shame. And we do that through a series of different processes that utilize community volunteers. And the role of those volunteers is to actually bridge conversations between the person who has committed the crime or the infraction with the people who have been harmed by those particular crimes or infractions. That happens with kids as young as kindergarten, and we have served people all the way up into their mid-90s with a wide range of different crimes that have happened locally in the various communities. So the communities that our CJC covers are Williston, Richmond, Hinesburg, Huntington, Bolton, St. George, parts of Shelburne and Charlotte, and parts of Jericho and Underhill. And those parts of communities are based on schools. And it's broken down into geographical areas based on a format that comes through the Department of Corrections. So our funding actually comes through a Second Chance Grant Act through the Vermont Department of Corrections, and then we get additional funding through municipalities. So the majority of our additional funding comes from the Williston Police Department, and most recently funding from the town of Richmond and the town of Hinesburg. And our case numbers vary year to year, but on average, I have dealt with about 220 to 250 cases, and they come to us in all various capacities. Some of those cases come from law enforcement through direct referrals, so coming to us as a first line of defense before going down to the court system, and folks who come to us by way of direct referral actually avoid any sort of criminal record with their successful completion of the process. That's one way that cases come to us. Another way that cases come are by referral directly from the state's attorney's office. So an officer might send a case down for review by the state's attorney, and the state's attorney's office will determine if they would like that case to move forward into the court system, or if they still feel that it's best suited in the hands of the community. And so we get a majority of our cases through that mechanism. And then additionally, We get cases from probation and parole as part of people's post-adjudication sentencing. We get folks who are coming out of incarceration who have a community restoration process that their reentry is asking them to do. We get cases from DCF, from local schools, from neighborhoods, and from local community members. Anybody who feels that there's something in the community that is causing harm or that they would like to address through a preventative means can contact the CJC, and we certainly will do our best to address those issues. And then in addition to that, another major component of what our CJC does is work with people who have been the victims of crime, making sure that they are connected to services that are specifically geared to address that, and making sure that anybody who is experiencing conflict has the opportunity to go through a process to address conflict through a non-adversarial means or through actual mediation. And those services are free of charge through the CJC as part of the services that are funded through the various funders that we have. And then lastly, the work of our CJC also encompasses the racial equity work, which I also lead for the town of Williston. And it's been, a really amazing job. I think I'm probably the luckiest person in our community to have the job that I have. I get to work with all walks of life, people who are experiencing crisis, people who are experiencing mental illness, suffering from addiction, homelessness, houselessness, depleted resources, and work differently than Hannah and her team do, but feel that it's a great way for us to connect with people in our community, get to know each other, and to find out how we're all more alike than not.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
On to me. Hi, everybody. I am Hannah Toof, and I am the program coordinator for Howard Center's community outreach team. I've been with the team since that better? Yes, you're welcome. Since October of last year. Previous to this role, I was on Howard Center's street outreach team. So that is the team that works in Burlington, embedded in the Burlington Police Department, and I did that for 8 years. So I'd like to think I've, had a lot of experience, wanted to bring a lot of what I saw and the types of work we did to the community outreach team. So I don't know who here knows about us at all, but I can speak. Okay, that's good. That's a start. I can talk a bit about what we do. So obviously employed by Howard Center, although we partner with 9 communities, Richmond being one of them. And that partnership, one piece of it is that we are embedded in the police departments. So for the past couple of years, Hinesburg has been our connection with the police to Richmond. And we, like I said, are embedded in the police department, so we can co-respond with officers to police calls that may have a social service need, a mental health component. We can respond in lieu of officers. That is a mission I'm working on since I left my last job, to really be a resource that if someone calls the police, and a police officer is not necessary, they're still going to get a response. They're just going to send us instead of an officer. We're piloting that a lot in South Burlington, and it's going really well. So that might look like a welfare check. Maybe a concerned neighbor hasn't seen their next door neighbor in a few days, mail's piling up, they're concerned, but they don't know that a police officer needs to go. Maybe there's some history with police, or just don't want to use that resource at this time. Our team will go out, make contact, do some, if possible, make some calls to try and find out where that person is. Just an example of how we try to work with the police. But we can also be accessed by anybody in the community. So earlier I was talking with a couple community members about, I think the kind of number one caller to us is a concerned community member, or someone at a library who sees someone that they think could use a little support or engagement. Call us, we'll come out, we come out in the moment. Granted, I said we cover 9 towns, and right now that is 300 square miles. Wow. And there are 5 of us. So we cover Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. till 6 p.m., so that is a lot of miles to cover, so we do our best to get there in a timely fashion. We are a free service. You don't have to be a Howard Center client to call us or to get a service from us. I'd like to think that we're just there to help problem solve, de-escalate, give a helpful hand. So give us a call. I find it's easier to answer questions because we really do so many different things. If that helps.
Great. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Chief Cameron, did you want to say a few words before we go to questions?
Sure.
Thank you.
I don't exactly know where to begin, but I've been in Vermont about 12 years, and I was as some of you may know, I was a high school social studies teacher, and went to school for that, and what's that?
Cool.
Went to school for that. I was on my path of, going through, I'm going to be a department head someday, and just all the things that teachers do. And I can't say that I really had the most positive regard for police. I mean, I didn't really think about it all that much, but I had a few incidents where one was a car accident I was in with my wife, where I felt that things could have gone a little better, and a few incidents like that. I think we've all had our sort of bad police moments where you're on a traffic stop and it's like, wow, I wasn't treated the way I think I should have been treated. And I was in the school talking with the chief. He would stop by, and a guy by the name of Todd Ward. And I said to Todd, "You're so nice, and I'm not used to police being that way." And he said, "Anthony, we're all different." And that sort of was the spark. And I went home and I told my wife, I think I'm going to go to the police academy. And she sort of thought I was crazy. And that was it. We moved back to Pennsylvania for a while. I went to the police academy just outside of Philadelphia. And again, my wife Amy said, "We should move to Vermont." And I'm like, where's that? Other than teaching it and knowing where it was on a map, I don't think we had been further than upstate New York. So I came and I got a job with South Burlington immediately. I really felt like, again, I felt that feeling that things could be better. And I soon came to Hinesburg, and I really started to develop what I felt was a positive way of policing, and developed, I think, a culture in the department of what is a different style of policing. And when Richmond did have some troubles, I sort of looked over, because that is not my hometown, and I thought, okay, it would be good if we could sort of spread that what we're doing in Hinesburg to Richmond. I think we've started that. I think we've successfully done that.
Great. Thank you so much. So I think we will move right into questions. And I think I'm gonna have to get up and pass this microphone around if I'm understanding our audio setup correctly. All right, so I will come to you. Hopefully you can introduce yourself, ask your question, and then I will run the mic back up to the person who will be answering it. So let's start with questions in the room, and then I'll pause at some point and we can do questions from Zoom. Thank you. Sure.
Hi there, Mary Houle. This is a question, I'm sorry, Hannah?
Yeah.
Hannah, no, I apologize. It's about the reacquainting the accused or convicted to the community. It's community justice. I apologize, I had the wrong one. Is this people that have been convicted that receive these services? Which is different from the victim, but the person, do they go through a conviction first, or are they referred to you before they go through the system? And if somebody comes to you prejudicial, are they already assumed to be guilty of something? Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. So that's a great question. So it depends on how the referral comes to us. So when a member of law enforcement will send a case to us through what's called direct referral, the person comes to us with an admission that they, in fact, committed the crime or the offense. It's a way for them to be held accountable and responsible for what's happened outside of the court system. There are laws that define what types of cases can come through restorative justice and what types of crimes cannot. And I'm sure many of you are aware that in Chittenden County, we have a state's attorney who really supports restorative justice. And so there's a long list of cases and crimes that she would like to have come through our process. And so those are called pre-charge cases, right? And so generally, those cases we're able to work through and resolve without any further interaction with the criminal justice system. However, cases will come to us, as I said, kind of through a trajectory, right? And so if a direct referral doesn't work and we send it back to the officer sends it down to the court, the state's attorney then can still say, I'd like that case to go back to restorative justice, but now it's going back on a state's attorney referral. So we would try again. If it's still unsuccessful, we send it back. And then it's really up to the state's attorney and that team to decide if they're going to have enough to move it forward in the court system. If somebody is convicted of the crime within the criminal justice system, they still could be referred to us on a court order. They could also be referred to us as part of their probation terms. And then anyone who's been incarcerated will also, as part of their reentry plan, most likely have some sort of a community component for their reentering. So that would require some sort of restorative process. That might be meeting with our restorative team to talk about what happened, how it happened, who's been impacted and how, and what are the needs of those people who have been harmed? What are the needs of that community? And so our process involves volunteers. I have 65 volunteers from those various towns that we serve who serve on our panels. And so they become the voice of the community. And then if there's a direct impacted party, they are also invited into the process so that they have voice and choice in what justice looks like and feels like for them. And then again, it's really dependent, how that case gets referred to us. So I can't say that it's somebody who necessarily has been convicted of it, but somebody who was either admitted to it or is being charged or has been found guilty of it. So it just depends on how it comes to us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Other questions? I'm sure we have a few other questions in the room before we go to any online questions.
Hi, I'm Jeff Forward. I had a question for both Chief Cambridge and for the Howard Mental Health, and it's less hypothetical than actual real events. So my understanding is we had a shooting in Richmond this summer that took quite a bit of time. It progressed over quite a bit of time. My question to Chief Cambridge is, how did that event go down? And my question to Howard Mental Health is, were you involved with this particular individual who I understand had some mental health issues either before, during, or after this event?
So I guess from start to finish, and I need to be a little careful because it is still somewhat of an active investigation and it is a mental health issue. So I was off, it was a Friday, and I got called in by one of my officers, and he had responded to a house. He had responded to a house that was sending erratic text messages to 911. And when he got there, the person was acting erratically, and there was a mother present and another individual, and he was sort of trying to calm the situation down, still not exactly sure why he was there other than the text messages. And at some point during the interaction, the individual walked out with a gun in his waistband, and he immediately said, I'm in my home, it's my right. So right away, my officer started coming up with a game plan to get him to the hospital, and he realized that there was no way that the police were going to be able to do it. He was very, wouldn't talk to him in any meaningful way. And it didn't seem appropriate, given what he was saying and his mental state, to try to take the gun from him, nor would it have been legal. So he went outside to coordinate with the hospital and get sort of things rolling. Mom had said, I'm going to take him to the hospital. When he stepped outside, the individual shot at Mom approximately 5 times. He hit her twice, and the gun jammed on the 5th shot. And we ended up in a we got the 2 individuals to the hospital. We ended up in a barricaded subject situation. I called all of our people. Matt came in, he was getting his boat on the water, and Andrew was on his way to Canada, and Frank was at Lampman's. Everybody was somewhere, everybody dropped everything, they came in. And we had the house surrounded. We called state police, Williston, everybody was there to help. But Hinesburg and Richmond were the primary officers on scene. When he finally came out, which was around 2:30 p.m., he had a gun in one hand, which was jammed, and a cell phone in the other. He dropped the gun on the deck and ran out, and that's when, you probably saw it on the news, the officers were telling him to drop everything and get on the ground. And we subsequently took him into custody, and we did have a negotiator from state police on scene, and their embedded mental health worker was on scene. They had called him, and that's the most of it.
So I think the chief gave the best description. Because of health confidentiality, I can't speak to anything further than that, but his depiction is accurate, and there is an embedded mental health worker in the state police, which I think, because they sometimes cover Richmond, it's possible that he will show up to calls as well. He's also through Howard Center, but not on our team.
Were you involved in any way with this incident? Can you say that? I mean, where did you go? I mean, were you called in? I don't understand how we use your service.
Sure. I guess I could speak more of how we can be used. We can be called to co-respond when it's safe, be there to strategize, do some follow-up, make referrals. That's how we can be used.
And you can't tell me whether you actually did that in this instance.
So we were not called. As the chief described, state police had their embedded worker.
All right,
So just a point, we have 2 microphones. This microphone, I believe, goes to the MCTV, and the microphone in the center of the table goes to the people on Zoom.
Oh, okay.
So if we all could speak a little louder if we're those asking questions, so that it would pick up on the microphone over by the table as well. So.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you all for all your work. My experience observing what's happening on the country, and I will give an example, on mass shootings, which is majority are white people doing the mass shooting, automatically the reaction will be from the media and the system, there is a mental health issue because of the shooting, and we treat it as is. Here in Vermont, what is the percentage of people of color and different ethnic group that being referred to your both organizations, number one, and why we see a high number of people of color on jail in comparison to the residents of a state of Vermont and Chittenden County of people of color. So I think of it as racism within the system, that if you are white, you will be referred to help from outside the judicial system. But if you are a black or a brown and non-white, you will be dismissed and you are a criminal automatically.
Do you want to just say your name for the folks listening? Just introduce yourself.
Wafiq Faour.
All right. Who would like to take a stab at that one?
I can try.
Okay. Sure.
So thank you, Afiq. I think, I can only speak from, my experience of what types of cases come through the CJC in the process. And certainly, there has been some data that's been collected, and I think that it's an area that the state has not done a great job of collecting. So over the last year, the Department of Corrections has started to ask us to collect race data. So we don't have a lot of data yet to report out on, but it certainly is something that we are collecting. I think the issue that I can speak to is the fact that we don't have a uniform policy across the state for who gets referred and what types of cases get referred. Right now, it's based on the state's attorney and the jurisdiction that they cover. And so there's a big push legislatively to work on more geographic equity for folks to be referred and the types of cases to be referred. What I can say, over the last couple of years with the work that our racial equity team has done and that we have done on a state level with the Department of Corrections, I have seen more non-white people be referred than in the previous years. And I think part of that is rooted in racism. I think part of it is rooted in, the system failure. And I think one of the answers is the work that the legislature is working really hard on addressing, making sure that there's geographic equity, making sure that there's, anybody who commits a certain crime at a certain point will have that opportunity to come through. We are not there yet, and there is a great deal of work to be done before we reach any sort of what I would consider to be a satisfactory outcome of equality.
Nope, actually, great. All right, question in the back.
Hello, Bonnie Stoyer. I guess it's a question mostly for Hannah, although Chief Cambridge, you can chime in if you want to as well. Just knowing, speak louder. Yes, okay, sorry. Knowing that mental health crises are not a 9-to-5 thing, Monday through Friday, I'm just curious about the resources available outside of that kind of narrow window and what the process is, like what kind of support or resources the police department has outside of that window. And the success so far, like I was a little unclear how long you've been working together and how often that connection has been made, and I guess you could speak to how is it going, this partnership?
Thank you.
I'll start with that. And so I have to say I don't actually know the amount of time that the town has had a contract that predates my time with the team. Is it 2 or 3 years?
I believe it was January of 21 for Hinesburg.
January of 21.
Before that for Richmond.
Okay, thank you. So just that piece before I forget. Outside of our hours, First Call for Chittenden County is the 24/7 crisis line. They're staffed 24/7. I think that they're someone who you call for a crisis of someone needs an assessment, someone may need to go to the hospital voluntarily, involuntarily. Granted, as I think everyone across all jobs knows and can see in this current day, staffing is difficult. And so they are 24/7, but if you call at 3 a.m., I don't know that there's someone available to come out. And so a lot of it is triaging, problem solving, working together, taking referrals. Maybe it's, calling our team. Yes, it's 8 o'clock at night, and you leave a message, and it's the first thing, the next day we come on, we say, okay, this is a priority. We're going to get all the info we can. We're going to go out and support. So we have to use the tools we have. But First call Virginia County, 24/7. Their number is 802-488-7777. 988 is also a crisis line that can be call or text to anybody if you're in crisis. So we're 7778. First call is 7777. Just putting it out there.
Very good.
Thank you. And then I would say that there are, in the time I have been here, which is almost a year, I think there's been a couple of times that we have been called out to Hinesburg, I think for Hinesburg, not for Richmond. So for this specific community, I'm not sure the numbers in the past year. It has not been many. I can say that. A lot of our work when we look at our Richmond numbers is our team has partnered with Department of Mental Health for the SOS VT for the flood recovery. So Richmond is one of the towns that we have outreach to specifically for that. So some of our Richmond numbers has been for engaging the community around connecting to resources. We've had a few people in crisis call specifically around the mental distress and emotional distress following that damage. And then we also serve people in Richmond who might be already connected to Howard Center. So we're doing follow-up, we're doing outreach, and that doesn't get routed through the police department at all.
The question has come up several times about numbers, and it's easy to think that everything is being tracked. We often will call dispatch and say, hey, we need outreach out because we're out with someone. That's the easiest path. And sometimes it's an after-hours call and we don't know the outcome. There's been times where we have called and they're either short-staffed or with someone else or whatever the situation is, or it's after hours. So I just thought it was a good idea. I created a call sheet now. So we are now going to track everything: the person, the case number, what time we called, if we got a yes, a no, and if it was after hours and we never found out, and unknown. And so next time we have this question, we're going to have a very accurate depiction of what is taking place in both towns.
Hi, I'm Patty Breschet, and I was just wondering, how often do you, Hannah, or you, Cristalee, meet one-on-one with the chief? How often does that happen? To discuss, how things are going, whatever.
Jana, can you repeat that a little louder?
This?
Yes. Repeat the question.
Just repeat the question.
Sure.
Louder.
So the question from Patty was for Cristalee and for Hannah and Chief Cambridge, what your one-on-ones meetings look like, how frequently do they take place? Thank you.
Thank you. So we don't have anything set in stone, and I showed up when I started and introduced myself and got a tour of the department. And I think that was probably the time we've connected. We also have steering committee meetings quarterly that we can talk about how things are going, get feedback. And so I'm not sure of your attendance at those, but that's an opportunity.
So I actually have weekly conversation/meetings with the chief, and have what I would consider to be a pretty extensive list of conversations that I have with all of the various officers through the Richmond PD, and certainly with Matt Cohen, newly being here. I have hours that I spend here in Richmond and hours that I spend at the Hinesburg Police Department each week. So I have a little bit more kind of initial contact and follow up about cases that are sent to us, reaching out if we're experiencing any complications. And oftentimes officers will reach out to me when they're not able to utilize Howard or any of those other services for various things. And so I would say that I have a pretty reasonable amount of contact and interaction, and we actually sit down quarterly and talk about our cases, make sure that our numbers match up. And I have a system of reporting that I'm required to do by the Vermont Department of Corrections that tracks all of my cases, the outcomes of those cases, where those cases land, and communicate that back to the chief and the officers who make those referrals.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for both organizations is that the officers can contact them directly, which happens, I think, quite a bit. They don't need to go through me for anything really, as long as the system is working the way it should. I think that's the most important thing, and also those quarterly meetings to make sure that if we need to change something like creating a form, it seems like a very simple thing, to make sure that we are getting an accurate depiction. So.
Thanks. I'll check in with you, Gretchen. Anything? No? All right, so more questions in the room.
My question is actually for Corporal Cohen. And Duke. Not everybody in the town watching on Zoom necessarily may be familiar with you and your partner there. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience and with the town and Duke since you've come on board here?
Sure thing. So Duke and I are a comfort dog team here in Richmond now. Our experience, we've been deployed since June. We've been out working in and out in the town. We've had a couple emergency calls for service where Duke has actually got deployed with patients or with individuals experiencing crisis in the moment. We've supported both the Hinesburg and Richmond staff members, both in town hall, over at the rescue centers, at fire departments, and obviously inside our police departments. And then since school has started back up, well, even during summer, I was going out in the community, out around some camps, things like that. Hi, buddy. And then since school has started back up, we've been in and out of the Richmond schools, saying hi to children and interacting in a positive manner inside of our community. Does that answer?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, one of the things that we often hear, I'm on the select board, so I hear this, is the value people place in community policing. And that's something that Chief Cambridge may want to speak about as well. I mean, that's something that you're both working in the community. That's what people seem to want. They want officers who are members of the community and not warriors and tanks. And we don't have tanks, thank God. So I just want to say, I think Duke and anything we can do to get people more accustomed to the officers who are serving them, I think that's all good. It's all part of the whole community policing thing that we're trying for.
Yeah, and I encourage people, if you see us out and about, and maybe didn't see you, just hang out and say hi. Mary has done that more than once. And stop and say hi, and and get my attention, because I might be going somewhere, I might not be. I might be able to redirect for a few minutes and get that interaction that we want to be positive in our community, so people know us and feel comfortable coming up to us when there is a problem.
Thank you.
Can I have a compliment before you leave?
Oh, sure.
Mary Houle. I think after the day of that shooting that you described, Chief, you and a second officer came to the town center, and I was taking care of the flowers, and I was chatting with you. I had no idea that you had just been in an incident where anyone else might be all askew, but you were calm, you were kind, you didn't brush me off, you gave me the time, and I was just, I don't even know what I was talking about, but the idea that you didn't say, I've got to go, I'm really in a hurry. And the officer that was with you, I don't remember the second officer, but you gave me the time of day, and I think that is so important, and it just lifts me up. And, you know, perhaps other members of the community can feel the same, but I want to thank you so much, and thank you for all the officers that cover Richmond. And one of these days, I'm going to show up at your select board and thank them in person. Thank you so much. We made the right choice.
I want to follow up on that. You know, so many times we read in the newspaper an incident where an individual is in crisis, has a gun, and doesn't survive that experience. You know, I want to thank you for going through that incident, not looking to resolve it quickly, but to resolve it safely. And you did do that, and it's really important to me. I think it's important to the community. I think it's important to the country as a whole that we get to a policing model where we de-escalate and not use guns as the first option. So thank you for that.
Great. So Gretchen just told me, I think we have a question from the chat, which is great.
So the question is, it was mentioned that there are some staffing shortages at Howard Center. What are other gaps or shortages of resources you see in attempting to support the safety of our community?
Yes, probably everyone has something to say about that. We can pass it around.
Thank you. I think one thing we are seeing as a team in all of the communities we serve is people who are unhoused, and we want to show up and we want to help and we want to make referrals, but we are at a point where there are not places or things and supports for a lot of the folks we're seeing. So I would say that is a huge gap. The other thing is accessible inpatient treatment for both mental health and substance use needs.
I would agree with Hannah about the housing and around the mental health access. Many of the clients that I have are on wait lists that are 6 months to a year to get into care or treatment. So that's really a major challenge. I think in addition to, you know, the shortage of housing and the cost of housing, and I'm sure Hannah experiences this with the same folks. So a lot of our folks overlap with each other, but working with folks who have who are on a do not rent list and who do not qualify for any of the emergency services, and what we do to make sure that they're safe in our communities has been a real big challenge. In my particular department within restorative justice, we are, you know, really short-staffed. We actually just did interviews yesterday, and I will put a plug out that we had Officer Cohen and Patty Breshett who served on our interview committee, so folks right here from your local community providing that great service to us. But, you know, there's so many things that come through the Justice Center, and having one full-time staff member, which is myself, and hoping to get one more is just not enough. You know, when we think about the services, people in crisis, those after hours needs, people who are resource depleted, people who don't qualify for certain services, we are lacking public transportation, which makes it a real big challenge for folks. And the loss of the free transportation on the buses has been a huge challenge just in the last couple of weeks. So those are areas that I see as challenges. And then one other area that I think is a real big challenge are access for services for youth for mental health. I think that, you know, the schools are doing a great job of trying to implement some of that. I know doctors' offices are embedding, you know, social work, but the amount of people that I see come through my office who need mental health care for juveniles is really, really high. And the exhaustive amount of time that we spend trying to get people into those services to just be told no, or to be told there's this wait list, or to be told that the need is just going to have to wait is, in my view, completely unacceptable.
So we're obviously a little short-staffed for Richmond right now, and it takes. There's a long process and in finding the right people, And I truly believe that towns get the type of policing that they ask for. And I think it starts with the chief and how the chief, first of all, treats the town, but also treats the officers. My predecessor said to me that if you walk in the office happy, your officers are going to be happy. And if you walk in having a bad day, they're going to have a bad day and they're not going to know why. But that translates to the community as well. And bringing in the right person and making sure that they not only click with the town, but with the department and the culture is essential. I'd rather not have an officer than have the wrong officer. And there's a time now where things are, I know police departments always say things are getting worse, but things are really, things that we have now, cars that it's at least once a week where an officer tries to pull over a car and they run now. And it used to be like once a year. It's at least once a week in both or either towns that we have a stolen vehicle or a recovered vehicle. I would say a couple times a month where there's some sort of a mental health issue or crisis. These are all things that shootings, in Hinesburg, we had the shooting in Richmond a week before that. We had a similar standoff with somebody that had two people that had kidnapped someone. So the communities are changing, and it's really important for me to make sure that the officers are not changing for the worse, and that we're handling that in a good way, and that when we do go to something, that no matter how bad things are, that again, we have that smile and okay, that's past us. Let's move on. Let's continue to be the type of police department that we know that we are. And that also includes making sure that we continue to do the things that we always do. Interactions with the community, lockouts. I can't tell you how much it means to someone. All the departments in Chittenden County have stop lockouts. Can't tell you how much it means to somebody if they're locked out of their car, if you go there and do a lockout. And other things like that, fingerprinting. Things that departments really have tried to move away from, house checks. If we don't make a special trip for a house check, but if we have a house check and we're in that area, we check the house. These are things that it's easy to say we're too busy. And with my departments, we don't do that. We say, no, we're not going to lose sight of who we are, no matter how much the community changes, and no matter how many things that we have to deal with.
Was that a question back here?
I don't want to, if anybody else,
No.
I've already
Go ahead.
asked a question. In the spirit of trying to really attract awesome officers to the department, I'm curious about equity between the Hinesburg department has been beautifully growing under you, and you've got, I think things sound like they're pretty stable there, and we're trying to regrow the Richmond force, and hopefully maybe my hope is that this is all going to be one big happy family at some point down the road. But I'm wondering about equity between, in terms of like pay and benefits and things like that that are going to keep officers with us in Richmond, because we've had a difficulty with that in the past. And this is, I mean, our town manager's here too, but just wondering about that. Yeah.
It is difficult because we, as departments are short-staffed, they tend to use money as one of the things to attract people. There's big bonuses right now in multiple departments, and there's an increase in pay across the state. I think on average across the country, between 23 and 24, police pay went up by 42%. State police just got a raise of 25%. So did a lot of little communities like Virginia's, huge pay boost to keep up with state police. There's only a certain amount of officers, so that will always be a challenge to us, is maintaining a staffing level and also not cutting corners because we're short-staffed. And I think we've been there. I think if you're fully staffed, there's always going to be a situation where your neighbor is going to try to pay more to attract you. And that's where it comes in, having a good department, a good town to work for, making sure the officers have a good home life. They like going to work. I've heard stories from other departments where officers sit in the car because they don't want to, they're waiting for that minute to go into the office. I don't want to have a department like that. I want the officers to be happy. If you need a day off because you need to take your son to the doctor, you get the day off. Most of the other departments, bigger departments, I don't want to knock anybody, but it's like 4 months out, okay, there's your day. And we don't operate like that. If we can make it happen, if I can make it happen, we do. And that itself is a way to attract officers that isn't monetary.
I think we have, so we're getting close to 8 o'clock, probably time for one more question, or maybe two if folks are ready, but Scott, you have a...
Thank you. Scott Silverstein. This is mostly a question for Chief Cambridge. It takes a lot of presence of mind, I imagine, to be able to size up a situation and to figure out quickly what sort of backup you need in terms of the mental health staff or additional officers. I'm wondering what training you get and how you come to make those decisions, recognizing that there is limited resources and you don't want to call everybody to every situation.
As far as training, that's another, there are a lot of departments, especially the bigger northern Chittenden departments, that you can't go to, say, truck school unless you're on the motor vehicle team. Or you can't learn to install car seats unless you're on the motor, or you can't go to a class that a detective would go to. As long as we have the funding and the officers want to, they can. And as long as I can provide it via the schedule. Now, when it comes to a critical incident, there's never enough. I'd rather call everybody and everyone that we possibly can and be wrong and not need them. Let's have the ambulance stage. Let's call the fire department in. It happens immediately when we go to look for someone. I'd rather do all of that than to look back and say, I should have done something and I didn't do it and we didn't find someone, or the person didn't get the help that they needed. So the answer is, when it comes to training, never enough. And when it comes to asking for services, asking for other help, I'll ask any agency or that day with the shooting, if you want to come help us, come help us. But we, make no mistake, that was our scene because I wanted to make sure that things went the way that Richmond and Hinesburg would handle things. So.
Thank you. If we don't have, we do have a question. All right. Final question.
Patty Brushin again. So public feedback has been very positive about police interactions and how you as chief conduct yourself through our collaboration with Hinesburg for police services. Richmond residents have long expressed their dismay that our police officers and chief come and go. You live in Richmond, which is pretty cool, and most of your officers live close by. This is very new for Richmond to have this kind of connection with our police officers. I'm just wondering, is there anything that you need? It could be something small, but is there anything that any kind of support that you need that Richmond can provide at this point? Is there something that we can do to make this work better? Because I know that you are being the chief of 2 towns now, and you have twice as many people that you're kind of keeping track of. So I'm just wondering, is there anything that we can do to give you more support?
Yeah, very nice question.
It can be challenging at times. Running one department can be challenging. And I have to say that especially things in Hinesburg, I've been doing the same thing for so many years. I'm in my 6th year there as chief, and they've come to expect, and I've come to expect how I'm going to be treated from the town and such. But in Richmond, it really has been an amazing experience dealing with not only the community members that I've gotten to know, my own community, but also the select board that's been amazing, and the town manager is, what I love about the town manager is I know that he really cares, and he really cares because he lives here. And so I really should be thanking everyone else for making it easier for me, not asking for more.
That's very kind. So I was going to give Hannah and Cristalee maybe just one more minute for final thoughts or any other information that you wanted to share that we didn't get to, and then I think I will have a few final things to say to folks to wrap up the evening, but I think we are closing in on 8 o'clock.
Thank you. I just want to say that I really appreciate being here, and my one last thought would be give us a call. Ask a question, get connected, we'll come out, nothing is too small. I'd really like to get more invested in this community.
Thank you. And I will just also share, I brought some information that's in the back of the room for folks to, if you want to pick up, that just kind of highlights a broad spectrum of the work that we do. But I also want to just put out, if anybody is interested in learning more about the CJC and understanding more of the work that we do or becoming a volunteer, please do get in touch with me. You don't have to have committed a crime or be the victim of a crime to ask for help. And certainly want folks to know that we're there, and you can call anytime, and look forward to connecting with more folks in this town.
Thank you so much. So just a couple final reminders, final thank yous. Thank you so much to all of our guests who are here tonight. I think the collective experience in this group is really impressive. Thank you so much to all of our community members who came with really great questions. I think it's been a really helpful discussion. And I think all of the folks who are here tonight have contact information that is available on the back table if folks have follow-up questions. So certainly can reach out to continue those discussions or any questions that maybe you didn't have answered here tonight. So, and just a reminder, we do have refreshments and snacks, so please feel free to hang out and do a little bit of informal chat after we wrap up here tonight. Folks are reminding me that we do have a written survey in the back of the room. So if you have a moment to complete that, give us some thoughts. That is really valuable. I think this is a great crowd here tonight, and I know that you all have things to share that we'll find useful as we move forward with future discussions of this nature. So please take a moment to do that. I think Gretchen is putting a link to the survey in the Zoom chat as well for the folks online. Possibly we can email you and ask for your online feedback for those folks who aren't in the room. But other than that, just thank you to this great crowd. Thank you everyone for being here. I think that's it. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and I am going to come to the